Welcome back. Shari Green is with us for our CKPG News special. Shari, we thought that we'd talk about roads, but first of all, let's talk about the River Road Dike, which was an interesting situation. It was just a few months into the new council's mandate, and the residents voted down through a reverse petition an opportunity to borrow city money or for the city to borrow money to put in a dike to protect the area along the River Road from the Nechako, from the ice jams that we've seen in the past. What kind of a message does that send when just months after an election, a reverse petition goes against a council decision?
Well, really it goes against a council decision from over a year and a half prior. And it all began when we had the significant ice jam flood back in 2006, and council of the day had a flood mitigation strategy developed. So some money, significant money, has already been spent along River Road in phase 1. And in September 2010, the council of the day applied to the province and the feds for a grant to do the next step, the phase 2, the dike. And we never heard from them again. And quite a bit of time went by, and I think, frankly, a lot of people just forgot about it. Things changed. The climate in the community changed. The economy, still hadn't rebounded back, and a new election happened, and nobody was talking about dikes and borrowing. We were talking core review, and boom, in January of 2012, the grant arrived. Millions of dollars from the province and the feds, and council was under an obligation to live up to its application and take the question to the voter and say, we've got this money, we would have to borrow to fund the rest. Do you want us to do so, yes or no? And I think for us to have spent about $60,000 on an election, if you will, to ask that same question, as we were required to ask of it because it was borrowing, would have been irresponsible. We knew people were going to say no to this, but we had to go through the motions of the exercise because we had to complete the grant application decision that had already been made before us from some time back. So we weren't surprised by it. I didn't feel, a personal defeat by it. I wasn't surprised in the least. And frankly, it's made it easier for us to move on and do some other projects that we know we need to do in our capital plan. We still have an issue. If there's a flood, we're going to have a problem. But I think that it was a strong indication from the community. Borrowing is not on. We don't care what it's about. We're not into borrowing right now. Fix our roads. And that was a clear message that resonated with all of us because we feel the same way. We know we need to fix our roads.
Well, it's a good opportunity for us to jump into the next topic, which is the roads. Certainly Prince George has sadly become known for its potholes. Whether it's fair or not, it's out there, and people are upset with the level of potholes. Last year, council did something rather extraordinary in the fact that they pulled money from a reserve fund.
Yes.
So from a fund that money was set aside for a certain reason, pulled the money from that, almost $2 million to put into the roads. So talk to me about that decision and what kind of thinking has to go into it.
Well, that is an extraordinary decision, and ultimately we forced ourselves into that outcome because during budget time in February, we were not listening to Councillor Stoltz. He said repeatedly over and over, we need to put more money into our roads. We know we have to. We're going to have to add 1% to the budget. We've got to do it. Spring is coming. The potholes will be here. There's potholes everywhere. Prince George is not unique, and I know that we like to complain about ourselves, as we talked about in the first segment. I travel quite a bit and see a lot on Edmonton, lots of communities with winter weather, lots of potholes. That being said, he warned us that we weren't putting enough into the budget this year, and council wasn't prepared to add another % onto the tax levy. We already knew we were hitting almost 4%. Even despite the layoffs that had been made and the significant changes we were about to undergo. He said, you've got to do it, and we just didn't. And the spring arrived, the thaw was brutal, and we got hammered on our roads. We're driving on them too. No one was happy, and so council had a great debate, hours of conversation at the table around a variety of options. And Councillor Hall said, there's got to be some money in here somewhere. We've got to have a reserve fund somewhere that has a project we're not doing. Is there one? And there was one. And there's a downtown development fund that we have some money set aside for a future project in the downtown. There's nothing on the books that we can afford to do right now. So it was a no-brainer for us, even though extraordinary, to take $1.9 million out of that fund. That's a one-time opportunity. That is not sustainable funding of road infrastructure. But it sure made a difference this summer, and I can't tell you how many people have commented and complimented the city on, you know what, you did something we know isn't normal, but you went and did it, and you heard us, and just about every road that needed it got it done. And so I was very pleased with that. Council certainly made a tough decision. But next year we're in the same boat. We're back to our normal base budget of $3.5 million. So are we prepared to do, as Councillor Stoltz had suggested, and put some extra money into the roads? You're going to see a tax line increase for roads this year.
How do we do that, though? How do you do that with everything else that we've talked about?
We're underfunding, and that's the priority the community has told us loud and clear. By turning down the dike, by saying fix the roads, fix the roads. That is our priority. For me, that's what the core review is about. Find some money, move it in there. If we can't move some money in there right now, or we haven't made enough decisions by the time budget time comes and your July tax bill arrives, we don't have any choice but to find some dollars this year for our roads. I think that we've got a lot of our roads are in pretty good shape because of what we've done. We're talking about crack sealing, preventative maintenance. Those things need to be done so that the pothole doesn't have an opportunity to form, because you won't allow the water to get into the cracks. We've got to do some better preventative maintenance at the front end instead of at the back end. So what it looks like in terms of taxes, I think people are prepared to say, you know what, as long as I know that's where it's going and I could see that result, I'm okay with that. We should be spending $7 million a year. We're only at 3.5. We don't have any choice but to raise the amount that we spend on roads.
All right, we'll take a final break and come back to wrap things up with Shari Green.